3 agonizing hours. That is how long Tu Na had been staring at the harsh, glaring light of the desktop monitor. Her shoulders were pulled painfully tight, her neck aching with a dull, heavy throb that crawled up to the base of her skull. The screen before her was a dizzying maze of numbers, the entire monthly payroll for the farm, every bag of fertilizer, every hour of extra hired labor, painstakingly typed into the ledger. Her eyes burned from the artificial blue glow. She blinked hard, finally reaching out, her tired hand resting gently over the plastic mouse, guiding the small white cursor toward that tiny square save icon at the top of the screen. She was just one single click away from being completely done. But before her index finger could press down, the heavy summer sky outside broke open. A deafening thunderclap violently shook the wooden walls of the house, rattling the glass in the window panes. The overhead lights flickered once, twice, and then instantly the room was plunged into absolute pitch-black darkness. The steady, reassuring hum of the computer died in a second. Silence. Hello everyone, welcome back to our quiet corner of the world. If you've spent any time here before, you already know the gentle rhythm of our home. It's Alex, Tu Na, and our little boy Henry, trying our best to build a peaceful, steady life out here where the old bamboo gate marks the edge of our yard. Usually our evenings settle down softly. Before the storm hit, Henry's small, muddy sandals had been neatly placed by the porch steps, and the smell of wood smoke still lingered from the outdoor kitchen. But tonight, a severe summer storm had rolled in off the mountains without warning. Power outages are a deeply normal part of rural life for us. We know the drill. We keep long white candles by the kitchen sink and heavy flashlights on the top shelf. But this was the very first time Tu Na had ever experienced a blackout while actively working in front of the computer. She sat completely frozen in the sudden dark, her hand still hovering awkwardly in the empty air where the mouse used to glow, a terrible sinking feeling settling deep in her chest. The sound of the heavy rain pounding furiously against the corrugated tin roof was deafening, yet inside the small home office, the silence felt thick and suffocating. Outside, the strong wind whipped fiercely through the large banana leaves, but Tu Na didn't move a single muscle. Beside the lifeless dark keyboard sat a small, painted ceramic bowl of pork porridge she had poured for herself 3 long hours ago. It was completely cold now, a thin, unappetizing film having formed over the top. She had entirely forgotten to eat. She had ignored the sharp cramps in her lower back and the stiff, aching joints in her legs simply because she wanted to get this financial report exactly right for our family. She slowly, numbly lowered her hand from the wooden desk. In the sudden, harsh flashes of lightning that briefly illuminated the worn floorboards, you could clearly see the sheer exhaustion etched into her face. Tu Na is a remarkably strong woman. She is someone who can easily carry 50 kilos of chicken feed across a flooded, muddy yard without uttering a single complaint. She knows exactly how to mend a broken wire fence and how to patiently coax a dying vegetable garden back to vibrant life. But this machine, this silent black desktop computer, was a foreign, deeply intimidating object that Alex had only recently convinced her to try using. Total panic began to set in, cold, heavy, and unforgiving. She vividly remembered what Alex had told her during their very first frustrating lesson. If the machine turns off before you save, it's gone. All of it. Gone. Over 1,000 delicate lines of data. 3 continuous hours of meticulous, painful typing, erasing every tiny mistake, squinting at the screen, and double-checking every wrinkled paper receipt by hand. She pulled her knees up tightly to her chest in the darkness and pressed the heels of her rough, calloused hands hard against her closed eyes. She didn't cry out. She didn't shout in anger or frustration at the storm. Instead, she just breathed out a long, shaky, silent sigh, feeling utterly defeated by the technology. She genuinely believed she had failed us. She felt that just because she was too slow, too cautious, she had let her family's hard work vanish completely into the void. For a long, heavy moment, the only sound inside our small wooden house was the relentless driving rhythm of the rain against the corrugated tin roof. Tu Na sat completely motionless in the suffocating dark, drowning in the silent, invisible weight of her mistake. She felt entirely alone. But then, cutting sharply through the violent roar of the storm, came a small, trembling sound from the main living room. It was Henry. The sudden, absolute darkness had startled him awake, and the terrifying, deep boom of the thunder had left him crying out in fear for his mother. In an instant, the frozen, heavy despair sitting in Tu Na's chest vanished, replaced entirely by a fierce, undeniable driving instinct. The lost payroll, the 3 hours of agonizing, back-breaking typing, the unforgiving black monitor, none of it mattered anymore. She pushed the heavy wooden chair back, its legs scraping loudly across the uneven floorboards, and stood up blindly into the pitch black. She didn't care about the silent machine anymore. She only cared about reaching her son. She moved slowly but purposefully, navigating the familiar tight layout of our home entirely by memory. Her rough hands trailed along the wooden wall of the narrow hallway, feeling carefully for the edge of the doorway. She finally reached the tall wooden shelf near the kitchen sink, her fingers brushing against the cold, heavy metal of the emergency flashlight. With a loud, sharp click, a wide, shaky beam of yellow light pierced the darkness, instantly illuminating the thick dust motes dancing in the damp, heavy air. Quiet realization anchor. It is incredibly strange how a single, ordinary moment can shift your entire perspective. Just 3 minutes ago, the sudden loss of a digital file felt like a catastrophic end to her week. But as Tu Na rushed across the room, gathering a crying, frightened Henry tightly into her arms and sitting with him on the cool, woven floor mat, that glowing screen seemed profoundly trivial. She wrapped her thick cardigan around his small, shaking shoulders, rocking him gently from side to side, whispering soft, rhythmic assurances over the deafening noise of the rain. The modern technology had completely failed her, but here, holding her child safe in the dim, steady beam of the flashlight, she was exactly where she needed to be. The true priority of our home was breathing quietly against her chest. They sat quietly together like that for nearly an hour, a small, warm island of safety in the middle of a raging summer storm. The violent wind outside eventually began to lose its angry, howling edge, settling into a steady, rhythmic downpour. And then, without any warning at all, the harsh, bright overhead bulbs violently snapped back to life. The ceiling fan groaned heavily and slowly began to spin. The old refrigerator in the kitchen shuddered violently and resumed its low, familiar humming sound. The house was fully awake again. Almost immediately, the heavy bamboo door at the front porch creaked open. Alex stepped heavily inside, bringing the sharp, cold smell of the wet earth and rain with him. He was completely soaked to the bone. Heavy drops of water dripped constantly from the wide brim of his dark hat and ran quickly down the sleeves of his thick green waterproof jacket, pooling darkly onto the dry floorboards. He had been out in the absolute worst of the weather, painstakingly checking the muddy drainage ditches around the chicken coops with bar tang, making sure the flock was entirely safe from the rapidly rising water. He let out a tired, heavy breath, leaning against the door frame as he slowly began peeling off his thick, muddy boots. Tu Na stood up, carefully carrying Henry, who had finally fallen back into a deep sleep against her shoulder. She walked slowly toward the entryway, her heart suddenly pounding a hard, anxious rhythm in her chest. The harsh reality of the lost work came rushing back the second the lights turned on. Before, after contrast anchor. Before this specific moment, the quiet silence between them was always just the comfortable, peaceful reality of a shared life. Now, that same exact silence felt incredibly heavy with guilt. She stood nervously before her husband, looking closely at his exhausted, rain-streaked face, knowing intimately that he had just fought the storm to protect their physical livelihood, while she had just carelessly lost hours of their crucial financial progress. "The computer," Tu Na said quietly, her voice trembling slightly, barely louder than the steady rain outside. She couldn't bring herself to meet his tired eyes, looking down at the muddy puddle forming slowly around his boots instead. "I didn't save the farm ledger, Alex. The power went out and it's all completely gone. I was too slow. I'm so sorry." She braced herself inward. In so many homes, this is exactly the fragile moment where pure exhaustion boils over into sharp anger. A deeply tired husband, a totally lost night of vital work, the crushing, invisible weight of rural survival pressing down on both of them. But Alex didn't sigh. He didn't throw his rough hands up in defeat or raise his voice in frustration. He simply wiped the cold rain from his face, looked deeply at his wife's worried expression, and offered a soft, genuinely reassuring smile. He placed a cold, wet hand gently on her warm arm. "Let's go look," he said calmly. Alex walked slowly toward the small desk in the corner, his wet socks making soft, damp sounds against the worn wooden floorboards. Tu Na followed closely behind, still holding a deeply sleeping Henry securely against her chest. The small room felt incredibly tense as Alex reached out and firmly pressed the glowing power button on the heavy desktop tower. The machine whirred to life, a low mechanical hum that sounded completely different now, less like a mysterious, intimidating threat, and more like a steady, familiar heartbeat. He didn't rush. He patiently waited for the system to load, then smoothly clicked open the accounting software. Tu Na instinctively held her breath, bracing her tired eyes to see a devastatingly blank white page. She prepared herself to start the agonizing process all over again. But instead, a small, unassuming grey box quietly popped up on the center of the illuminated screen. The stark contrast of the bright modern digital screen lighting up the rustic, rough-hewn wooden walls of their rural home felt less like an invasion now, and more like a bridge to their future. Document recovered. With one gentle, deliberate click of the mouse from Alex, the dark screen instantly flooded with numbers. Every single line of data, every carefully typed fertilizer cost, every hour of Bartang's extra labor, it was all there, exactly as she had left it before the blackout. Tu Na gasped sharply, her free hand flying up to cover her mouth in pure, unguarded shock. "You see," Alex said gently, his voice carrying the deep, quiet warmth of the room. "You thought this machine was completely unforgiving. But it has a hidden memory, an automatic safety net built strictly inside it for moments exactly like this. It remembers your hard work, Tu Na. It catches you when you fall, just like we protect each other out there in the storm." A profound, heavy wave of relief washed over her, instantly melting away the bitter exhaustion of the past 3 hours. She could smell the lingering scent of fresh rainwater and wet earth on Alex's jacket, a grounding reminder of the physical world they tended to every single day. The cold, lifeless machine was no longer an invisible enemy to be feared. It was simply a useful tool, a silent partner in their daily struggle to build a stable life for their son. She leaned forward gently, carefully balancing Henry's weight on her hip, and decisively clicked the small save icon herself, feeling a deep sense of control finally return to her hands. Alex rested a warm, heavy hand on her shoulder. They stood there together in the quiet, comforting yellow light of the small room, looking at the safely glowing screen while the violent summer storm continued to rage helplessly against the dark glass window outside. The harsh wind could not touch them here. Tonight, Tu Na finally learned to trust the technology that helps run their farm. The deeper truth is that the modern tools we fear the most are often designed to protect the very human effort we pour into them. Tomorrow, the deep mud will need clearing, and the hot sun will dry the flooded yard, bringing entirely new physical challenges for their calloused hands to solve. But for now, the ledger is safely closed. Their little boy is sleeping deeply, and the hardest storms will always break against the walls of a patient, loving home. Have you ever lost your hard work to a sudden power outage or a machine failing? Share your experience with us in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel to join Alex, Tu Na, and Henry as we continue building our life together, one small step at a time.